Welcome to your Get That Nugget for GCSE Maths. Today we will be concentrating on giving you a framework to answer grade 4 highest common factor, lowest common multiple style questions. Please note this session is to complement your lessons with your teachers. It's not to replace them in any way. So let's have a look at highest common factor, lowest common multiple style questions. Now, the method we're going to use for these is going to be the method using prime factor decomposition. Often you'll see these questions linked. There might be a prime factor question as a part A, and then there'll be a HCF LCM question, which is what these stand for: highest common factor, lowest common multiple. So we're going to use that method for these, irrespective of whether numbers are small or large. It's good practice, and it gets us familiar with prime factor decomposition and Venn diagrams. So highest common factor, lowest common multiple. Highest common factor, effectively, what's the biggest number that I can divide these two by without a remainder? And lowest common multiple, if I was to do the 12 times table and the 15 times table, what is the first number that appears in both times tables? So that's effectively what they mean. So we're going to do them in sort of one fell swoop. So we're going to look at 12 first. So if you get highest common factor, lowest common multiple question, the first thing is prime factors. So I'm going to do 2 multiplied by 6. Now I know 2 is a prime number. If we look at 6, I can get 6 by doing 2 multiplied by 3, and I know that these two are also prime numbers. So now I move across to 15, and we do a similar method. How do I make 15? Well, that is going to be 3 multiplied by 5, and I know that 3 and 5 are prime numbers. So that's the first step. Make sure we're familiar with our prime factor decomposition. And now what we're going to do is something called a Venn diagram. So what we've got is I'm going to do a circle here, and I'm going to do a circle here. Circles are never the best when they're drawn freehand, but I've got plenty of space in the middle just in case I've got a bit of overlap. So number 12 is this side, and number 15 is this side. And what we do is we look at numbers that are common in both, but we're just looking at factors first. So if we look at the prime factors, I can see I've got a 3 here and a 3 here. So what I can do is I can put that in the middle of my Venn diagram because it appears in both. And because I put it in the middle, it's in the circle for 12 and it's in the circle for 15. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross it off of both because I popped it in the middle. So actually I've taken it from both of those effectively. Now what's left can go in the circles relevant to whichever number we're looking at. So I can see I've got 2 2s left over here. So I'm going to go 2 2. You notice I'm using a highlighter. It's just to make it nice and visual. So I'm getting rid of the 2s. I've chosen a different color highlighter because it's not a number that's shared by both. And then on the 15, I've got a number 5 left over here. And then if I highlight, I know that I've chosen all of my circled numbers. There's none left. Right. How do we work out highest common factor? Well, what we have to do for highest common factor is this is the one we get by multiplying the numbers in the middle. So all the numbers that are in the middle. Now, I'm going to do another equals because if we look at our Venn diagram, the only number that overlaps in both is the number 3. So in terms of multiplying, I haven't got to multiply by anything. I can see it's just a 3. And if we think about lowest common multiple, for this one, what we do is we multiply all of the numbers in the Venn diagram. So we're going to multiply them all. Now, sometimes you can ask, well, why do the Venn diagram if we're going to multiply all the numbers? Well, actually, because if you look, the reason we put 3 in the middle is because we don't need 2 of them because it's shared by both. So it eliminates us accidentally multiplying 3 twice. So if we multiply all of the numbers, now again, my advice for this is to multiply the larger numbers first and then by the smaller. I just think it's a little bit easier to multiply. So what I'm doing, 5 times 3 times 2 times 2. 5 times 3 is 15, double it is 30, and double that gives me 60. So my highest common factor for those two numbers is 3. That's the biggest times table that they're both in. And the lowest common multiple, the number that appears the first time in the 12 times table and the 15 times table, is 60. So hopefully that one makes sense. It's nice to use the highlights. It's just a bit visual. You can see where the numbers have come from. So that's how we would do highest common factor and lowest common multiple. What about slightly more tricky numbers in the sense that we've got a few more prime factors? Well, the process is exactly the same. 36 I would do by doing 6 multiplied by 6. I know they're not primes, but I can do 2 multiplied by 3, which are primes, and similarly for 6, 2 multiplied by 3. If we go across to 45, I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to do 5 times 9. That's my only option. And 9 isn't a prime. Remember, it's 3 multiplied by 3. That's a classic number that people think is a prime because they see it as odd and stop. Right, Venn diagram, 2 numbers. So 1 circle and then another circle. Slightly bigger overlap here. I always tend to try and make it a bit bigger just in case I've got more than one number. So we've got 36 and we're going to go with 45 over here. First things first, are there any numbers that appear in both? Well, if I put a 3 in here, because I can see there's a 3 that overlaps, what I can do is I can take a 3 from here and I can take a 3 from here. But I can also see there's another 3 they both share. So what I can do is if I put another 3 in the middle, then I've taken this 3 from both of them again, because it's in the overlap. And then have another look. Well, I can see I've got 2 2s that are left over here and 1 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my 2 2s there. And again, I'm just going to mark them off with my highlighter, just so I know that I've put them into my Venn diagram. And over here, I've got a 5 left. So again, I'm just going to cross my 5 off here, just to show that I have highlighted all of the prime numbers. There's none that I've missed off. Remember, we don't need to do any numbers that aren't circled. And now we're going to do my highest common factor, which from the prior example, we know that we multiply all of the numbers in the middle. So 3 times 3 means the highest common factor is 9. That's the biggest number they're both divisible by. And then the lowest common multiple, we're going to have to multiply all of our numbers in this Venn diagram. So 5 multiplied by 3, multiplied by 3, multiplied by 2, and then multiplied by 2. And what we should have, 5 times 3 is 15. Multiplied by 3 is 45. Double 45 is 90. And if we double 90, we should get 180. So that's the lowest number that appears in the 36 and the 45 times table. And that's how we would do highest common factor and lowest common multiple for those 2 numbers. So again, very similar method. It's a nice solid method. It helps us with prime factors and gets us familiar with Venn diagrams and the overlapping side of the Venn diagrams. Okay, now I've got another question that can be a little bit tricky in that you may well get 3 numbers. Again, the principle is still the same, 20. How do we make 20? Well, that is 5 multiplied by 4. I know 5 is a prime. How do I make 4? Well, that is 2 multiplied by 2. We're then going to do 25, which is quite a nice one because that is just 5 times 5, and they're both primes. And then we're going to do the same thing for 35. Well, that's just going to be 7 multiplied by 5. And we know that 7 and 5 are prime numbers. So what we're going to do now is a Venn diagram, but we've got 3 circles this time. So I've got 1 here, I've got 1 here, and I've also got 1 here. So that's the way you would do them. Sometimes people do the 3 circles sort of next to each other, but then we don't have that middle overlap for all 3. So I'm going to say this is 20, this is 25, and then this one down here is going to be 35. So the first thing we're going to do is look to see if there's any numbers that appear in all 3. Well, I can see there's a 5, and a 5, which means this is going to sit in our central overlap because that 5 is then in all 3 circles. So I can take it from here, here, and here, because I put it in the middle. If we look, there are no other numbers that actually overlap. Nothing at all. If we had a number that was in 20 and 25, we would put it in here. If it was in 35 and 25, we would put it here. But at the moment, we've got 2 2s for 20, which means I've got 2 2s there. And again, I always like to rub them off because I want to make sure that I've crossed off all the numbers. We've then got a 5 left over in 25. And I've then got a 7 left over in 35. So what we've got is we've got those. And then we can answer the question. It's highest common factor and lowest common multiple question. So highest common factor, we know is multiply all the numbers that are in the middle. It has to be in the middle for all three. And then one we've got is 5. So highest common factor is 5. Lowest common multiple, again, from prior examples, we're going to multiply all of our numbers in the Venn diagram. So we should have that. What we've got, and again, if you need to break it down and do the calculation separately, that's fine. But I know 7 times 5 is 35. And then 35 times 5 is going to be 175. And then if we double 175, we get 350. And if we double 350, we should get 700. So that's how we would work out lowest common multiple. Again, you don't need to do them in that specified order. If you wanted to, you could have done your 7 times 5, then times 2, whatever you're comfortable with. But I've done that quite quick just to show how we get that method. And that's how we would do lowest common multiple for that question. And then one last question we're going to get you to do, which is sometimes we might get a worded question. So very quickly we'll look at this one because it follows the same format. So 2 buses, both use the same bus stop. Bus A runs every 12 minutes. Bus B runs every 14 minutes. Both buses are at the stop at 10 a.m. What time, I think it should say there, will both buses next be at the bus stop? So again, it's not necessarily obvious whether you're finding a highest common factor or a lowest common multiple question. But if the bus runs every 12 minutes, it's going to be 12, 24, 36, 48, etc. And this bus is going to run every 14. So 14, 28, 42. So what we're looking for in this question is a lowest common multiple. So you just need to sometime work out, right, is it highest common factor I want or lowest common multiple? And so what we're going to do is exactly the same process as before. So prime factors, so 2 multiplied by 6. And to get 6, we do 2 multiplied by 3. And then we're going to do the same for 14. How do I get 14? Well, that's quite nice. 2 multiplied by 7. And then what we do for that one is we do our Venn diagram. I've only got 2, so I'm only going to need 2 circles, 12 and 14. Which number appears in both? Well, I can see I've got a 2 here and a 2 here. So that is going to be in the middle for me. I'm going to cross that one off because I've used it up. Is there anything else in terms of numbers that appear there that they share? No. So I've got a 2 and a 3 here, which means that's 2 and 3. And I've got a 7 left over here. So if I wasn't sure if it was highest common factor or lowest common multiple, well, I know the highest common factor is 2. 2 doesn't make sense in this question. The next time they're going to be at the bus stop isn't going to be 2 minutes later because bus A takes 12 minutes and bus B takes 14. So I know I'm going to have to do the lowest common multiple. So 7 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2. I know 7 times 3 is 21. If I double 21, I get 42. And if I double 42, I get 84. Now remember, this is minutes, so that's 84 minutes. And the question wants what time? Well, it makes sense to turn that into hours and minutes. Well, there's 1 hour is 60 minutes, so that's the same as 1 hour and 24 minutes. So if they were both at the same stop at 10 a.m., they're now both going to be at the same stop 1 hour and 24 minutes later, which is going to be 11:24, and I would always keep the AM there to ensure I'm being consistent with what I've got in the question. So yeah, it's sometimes there's a worded question, just have a look. Does highest common factor make sense or is it lowest common multiple? And then the process is identical to what we've worked through before. And then a few questions to try. Very similar format. I'll just zoom out a little bit so you can see. So highest common factor and lowest common multiple, those sets of questions, including one with 3 numbers, and then sort of your typical worded example as well to have a little look through.